And joining us now is the author of The Assault on Reason, former Vice President Al Gore. And it's good to have you with us this morning. Okay, you're not going to tell me again that you have no plans to run, are you? Tell me this morning.
Well, I'm not a candidate, and this book is not a political book. It's not a candidate book at all. It's about the fact that there are cracks in the foundation of American democracy that have to be fixed. You know, I've been working on this climate crisis for so long, and that has led me to ask why it is that in our great democracy we have not yet reacted to the overwhelming evidence that we should respond to the climate crisis, just as we did not react to the overwhelming evidence that it was a mistake to invade Iraq.
Well, I want to come back to that thesis because part of it involves our jobs in television news, and I want to deal with that. But nonetheless, Mr. Vice President, it's going to be very hard for people to read this book and say this is not a political book, because this is a book that really does go to the current administration. And my question...
Just as one of many examples of how our conversation of democracy has turned toward these buzzwords and phrases, like the frame for the discussion, the logo, Campaign 08. That's not what this is about. You know, for anybody who has asked the question, has something gone wrong in our country? This book is about that. It's about what's gone wrong and how we can fix it.
But you use some very strong language here, for instance, about Iraq. And you do say at one point that history will judge this invasion as not only tragic but absurd. And another point you say, if Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, the president took us into a war he didn't have to. 3,000 Americans and countless Iraqis died unnecessarily. Are you saying in this book and this morning that Americans, 3,000 of them, died unnecessarily?
See, that's the kind of buzzword approach. Is it an unnecessary death? No, those who serve our country are honored in memory, and those who are still serving are always honored. That's not the question. There is hardly anybody in America left, Diane, who doesn't believe that it was a terrible mistake to invade a country that didn't attack us. But all of the evidence necessary to make that judgment before we invaded was available, and in hindsight, all of the blue ribbon study commissions, they look back at it and they say, oh, it's really obvious we shouldn't have done this. Republicans, Democrats, now the conclusion is not really partisan. This was a mistake. But we have been making a series of really important, really big mistakes. And the question is, how can we reinvigorate the role of we the people in American democracy so that we're part of the conversation, and so that those in both parties who are part of the elected representatives, those who are supposed to be making these decisions, are listening to reason, are looking at the facts, and not brushing past them.
Again, not to come back to this and fall into your thesis that the press only wants the horse race of the political campaign, but one way
back to the horse race.
Back to the horse race, because you do say that the most effective way to change America is as president. There's no question. That's the most effective way. And
well, it's one way.
It's one way. Well, and I just wonder, when will you make a decision, and what will it be that causes you to make that decision if you're waiting and watching?
Well, you know, I'm not pondering it. I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on how to solve the climate crisis. And in order to solve the climate crisis, I'm convinced that we're going to have to address these cracks in the foundation of democracy, these basic problems with the way we're approaching decision making. You remember the old book Alice in Wonderland, where the character said, first the verdict, then the trial. If we make decisions in America, whether it's on the invasion of Iraq or the climate crisis, on the basis of what powerful political forces want this verdict, and then afterwards, after we make the mistake, then we look at the evidence, you know, we're going to get in even more serious trouble if we do that. We have the basis for curing the problems in American democracy, but it involves not just picking a candidate, not just running an election campaign. It involves all of us. It involves the news media. It involves the citizenry.
One of the things you say is that the internet, you believe, is going to make us more interactive, because in some ways you think television news is anesthetizing because you just watch it and don't interact with it. But I've got a question. I mean, you say it several times that we're losing the mental muscles that you need for a democracy. But there are those in your own party who would argue Democrats were swept into Congress. So are you saying that was the American people with no mental muscles?
No, I think that was a belated response to some of the perceived mistakes in the current administration. But I think that the threshold for change was way too high. I think it was 6 years of mistakes where people did not respond. Let me give you one quick example. Just before the Congress, the Senate, voted on invading Iraq, polls showed that more than 2/3 of the American people genuinely believed that the person mainly responsible for the attacks of 9/11 was Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Now, that was wrong, as we now know.
And you think that would have changed the political climate for going into this war?
No, again, this is not about politics. I think that it would have changed. I think that if we had a full debate and a full airing of the pros and cons of the invasion that brought out the fact that Iraq had absolutely nothing to do with attacking us on 9/11, then we would have been much less likely to have these troops trapped over there now in the midst of a civil war. See, it's all the focus now is on, okay, how do we get out? And that's proper. But how do we avoid getting into another mistake like this? That's what this book addresses. And for those who want to dig deeper and ask the question, what is it that's gone wrong in the way we've been making decisions in America? That's really what this book is all about. We
are going to dig deeper. In fact, we're going to come back with another piece because I really want to talk more about this thesis. But to dig not very deep, once again at my peril here.
Listen to you. Listen to
okay, I just want to say one more time. Donna Brazil, your former campaign manager, has said if he drops 25 to 30 pounds, he's running. Lost any weight?
I think, millions of Americans are in the same struggle I am on that one. But look, but listen to your questions. The horse race, the cosmetic parts of this, and look, that's all understandable and natural. But while we're focused on, Brittany and K-Fed and Anna Nicole Smith and all this stuff, meanwhile, very quietly, our country's been making some very serious mistakes that could be avoided if we, the people, including the news media, are involved in a full and vigorous discussion of what our choices are.
Former Vice President Al Gore, going to stick around. As I say, we're going to talk further, and in another, later on, we're going to be bringing you another look at his thesis about all of us in television news and what's going on.